everyone, this is Chaowen recording in May 2023. After finishing the first season of the Conductor's podcast, I have decided to give this podcast project a dedicated website with more user-friendly functions. So now we have a brand new website called theconductorspodcast.com. Straightforward, right? And now we also have its own Instagram handle. It's also the same, the Conductor's Podcast. All the show notes have been moved to the new site, and I invite you to come check out all the resources, and happy listening.
We don't want to act the music, we want to be the music, right? We want to ingest the script, which in our case is the score. We want to learn how to improvise and be empathetic and great listeners and react on the podium and on the screen, right, with our other actors, in this case, musicians. So there's a ton we can learn from acting classes.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Conductor's Podcast. I'm so excited to welcome you back today because I love and adore and really admire the guest I have today. She is someone that she was a legend for me, to say the least, because I had known her name for so many years. When I first came to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia, she was chairing the band department at UGA that is in Athens, about an hour or an hour and a half away from where I am. I had always wanted to be connected to her, but because she was such a big name and I felt so little and so ashamed, and I'm really awkward with networking. I don't know how to just go up to people and introduce myself and all that. So I just kept my secret admiration for many, many years until COVID hit and everything went online. And luckily, I got connected with so many friends, new friends, and reconnected with old friends that we were too busy to see each other, to talk to each other in meaningful ways through the pandemic halt. I am so excited to welcome her to the podcast because we have tried so many months. I think we've tried for more than half a year, maybe, to schedule a day and time to record this interview. And this is the conversation that I laughed the hardest. I will not say much about her because she will tell you everything that you need to know about her. My guest today, that you guessed, is Cynthia Johnston Turner.
Hey, Cindy, so great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming. We are there laughing.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, the podcast can be just us laughing uncontrollably. See who tunes into that. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm sorry it's taken so long. You've been asking for a while, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, and it's great that we could finally find the time.
After the thunderstorm.
After the thunderstorm, yeah. Listeners, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I just went through this incredibly cool thunderstorm here on Georgian Bay in beautiful Ontario, and so we had to delay our start, but it was pretty cool to enjoy a thunderstorm on the water.
It's so cool. We'll get back to thunderstorm in a minute, I promise.
Okay. Okay.
But I always ask my guests this question that you probably were asked like 1,000 times. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you get to where you are? I know you started a new position last year.
Yeah. Well, I'm always amazed that people want to hear about this. But yeah, I'm just coming up. Well, no, I'm finished my first year as Dean of Music at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario. And it's been a ride. It's a job I took because it scared me the most, and it is for sure scary sometimes. I have not been overly complimentary of leadership in our field, not conductors, but principals, deans, superintendents, presidents, etc. And so when this opportunity came along, I thought, okay, Cindy, let's see if you can do any better. You got all these ideas. Let's put some action behind these words. So here I am doing my best. And it's a great school. It's very progressive, very innovative, and a faculty that want to innovate even more. So that's very exciting. We just had a retreat last week that, we're moving. It's really cool. Stay tuned. There's lots of cool things happening at Laurier in the next few years. Anyway, before that, I was director of bands at University of Georgia, which I loved. And I know you're in Atlanta, and I miss Atlanta, and I miss Athens very much. I'm not sure I miss all that humidity this time of year, but
no, more thunderstorms.
yeah, great thunderstorms. But I do miss the people, and Athens, such a cool town, and I miss it. And before that, I was director of wind ensembles at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. Also some very nice thunderstorms for 10 years. Loved that, missed that. I miss Ithaca too, but Ithaca and Athens are very similar. It's just Athens hotter. I sometimes called Athens Athica just because it was just the same town, only in different locales, And then before that, I was doing my doctorate at Eastman. Wonderful, wonderful time. Before that, I did my master's at University of Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And before that, I was head of a high school music program just outside of Toronto for 10 years. So
you're Canadian.
Yes, I'm born in Canada, and I'm a dual citizen now. So my husband and I got our American citizenship 2 years ago.
Oh, so now you are not conducting ensembles, you're conducting people?
Maybe. Well, yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah,
how does it feel
they don't always come in when I ask them to.
Well, ensembles don't either. Dude, and ensembles misinterpret what we do.
Yeah, I mean that's what conducting is, right? It's just leadership, right? Good conducting is good leadership, and knowing when you're needed and knowing when you're not needed. That second one is very important, right? And being a servant to the music and to the people in a lot of ways. So that, to me, that's what good leadership is. And I'm practicing that every day. And that's what good conducting is. So yeah, I'm not doing any ensembles yet at Laurier. I have a very generous and healthy research budget. So I'm going to be looking at doing something as we welcome our new composer on faculty, Kevin Day. I want to do something that celebrates his arrival with some of his new music. So I'll probably hire some players, and we'll probably do a side-by-side, some professional players alongside our best wind, brass, percussion players, string players. And then we have also a relatively new composer at Laurier, Barbara Sinanock, who's an incredible she's an incredible composer who happens to be Indigenous. So I'm thinking I'm sort of crafting a project in mind that I'll be doing some conducting for sure. But I'm doing a lot of conducting in the States and abroad, so that's keeping my musical chops in line.
I have so many questions. So are those projects one of the things that you mentioned? You have so many ideas when you took this new role. What are some changes that you were trying to experiment or you wanted to see happening?
Well, we're piloting a new model for ensembles, actually. So I think that there's a large disconnect between music education and conducting.
There's
that.
Something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So what students are learning in music education classes and grad students are learning in education classes isn't necessarily happening in the ensemble model. Conductors aren't necessarily paying attention to all of that. We're too busy premiering the next new piece for band, right? So, and I'm not saying all college band conductors are like that. That's certainly not the case, but a lot of us are. So I'm interested in more synergies. Oh my gosh, you should have seen this fork lightning that just happened. So there's going to be it's like huge right over the bay there. Oh, that distracted me. Talking about conducting and music education. Yeah, I'm interested in more synergies there and more conversations and allowing our students to make more connections. In fact, I'm very interested in that in a music education curriculum overall. So what students are learning in the musicology silo and the theory silo and their ensemble silo and in their own practice room, how can we help those students make our students make those connections. I mean, I use this analogy all the time, but Steve Jobs, when he was asked about creativity, he said all creativity is just making connections. When you ask creative people how they came up with something, they think they're kind of embarrassed because all they did was see something because they were allowed to make connections. And are we doing that in our music curriculum? I don't think so. That's what we're interested at Laurier in, changing our curriculum, that there are way more synergies across the various disciplines and abroad, actually, not just in music, but what are they learning in their electives? It's harder, right? There's a lot more conversations that need to happen, a lot more syllabi that need to be shared at a really, not just, hey,
Yeah,
here's
a
my
lot of
syllabi.
collaborations.
Yeah, a lot more collaboration. And, I say jokingly, but kind of not, collaboration would be great if it weren't for other people, right? It's like, it's just hard, right? And sometimes you have to, not compromise your ideas, but think about things that you've always done differently. And I like that the Laurier faculty are totally into it. So that's very exciting. And so the ensemble model that we're piloting in next year is a modular model. So I've always kind of been bothered by the fact that the amount of time, sorry, that's my puppy, the amount of time that our students spend in ensembles preparing for those rehearsals, all of the rehearsals, maybe a dress rehearsal, a concert, and then we turn around and do it again, relative to the credit weight they receive, is not in line, right? As there's something pretty offside about that. Either we raise the credits, which is not going to happen in most music schools for a variety of logistical and pedagogical reasons, and we change the model of ensembles. And so we're experimenting with a modular approach. So for instance, wind ensemble will be a 3-week module. And at the same time, there'll be a string orchestra 3-week module, percussion ensemble 3-week module, et cetera. So it's more intensive. It's the same amount of rehearsals, but we have to think about our repertoire, the volume of pieces and the difficulty of pieces and the purpose of those pieces, right? And then probably what's going to happen is that there'll be another audition, and our best wind, brass, and percussion will then join the best strings to obviously an full orchestra concert. And that's a cool project that Kira Omelchenko is putting together with an indigenous composer, not Barbara, but another great lightning strike. And those other wind, brass, and percussion that were not in the orchestra this rotation will be a lab ensemble for our music education majors and our beginning conductors and our advanced conductors and our community musicians, et cetera, to be a lab ensemble to rehearse, say, grade 2 pieces, right? I mean, a lot of our music education majors and our DMA and wind conductors have been exposed to pieces that they will probably not do in their first job, right? They're not going to do Winds of Nagual on their first gig, right? So how can we better expose them and rehearse them to, quote unquote, I use this word carefully, quality literature at a younger level so that they know how to rehearse it, et cetera. So that's the model. I mean, there's more to it, but that's generally what we're trying to do. And we're going to elicit student feedback as we go. And so that kind of modular approach, if it works, we were going to apply to the entire curriculum.
I see. Earlier this year, I interviewed for a position. They have a similar setup for ensembles, but for practical reasons, because their conductors and students have so many outside gigs.
Oh, interesting.
So they condense orchestra to 2 weeks. So you come in 2 weeks, 3 rehearsals, like 3-hour rehearsals a week and 2 weeks. And then you break into wind and strings. And then you get together or for opera for 3 weeks or so, and then break for one part working with the choir, the other part working with new music ensemble, per se. So I would be really curious to check back on you next year to see how this works.
Yeah, I mean, we also have it's a pretty awesome opera program, so that's another module for sure. New music will be something that I will do, but we're not going to bring that in next year. If we do, it'll be in the spring. I mean, I'm really still getting my feet wet with all of the incredible elements of this job. So I just have, plus keeping my gigs alive, my guests conducting and teaching in the States. It's been...
Yeah, with all the meetings and paperwork and reports you have to do.
It's been a challenge. Well, I have to, acknowledge the team. I mean, it's incredible staff at Laurier who just make the job so much easier, and also incredible associate deans. I mean, they're so on top of it. Thank goodness, because I, frankly don't know what I'm doing still. So they cover my back a lot. So it's great.
That's okay. That happens a lot to us conductors in general.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
You kind of noodle through things, still not sure what you did.
Yeah, sometimes for sure.
But I wanted to pick your brain on this because I've been thinking a lot about how we not teach leadership in conducting education. Like we focus so much about learning the rep, right? Or fixing your hand, standing up. But you don't learn those things until you make mistakes, fatal mistakes, when you're on a job. Like, how do you see that, like, being part of your, like, see how we can make that better for our students?
Yeah, this is another criticism I've had of music education training, right? I mean, it's just fitting it all in. Of course, they have to be exposed to all the rep. They have to have rehearsal techniques. They have to fix their hand. They have, as you said, they need to know, have to hone gesture and have a great sense of time and score study and all that wonderful stuff. Really, the basics. But yes, how do you instill great leadership into music education training? I mean, there's so many books on leadership right out there. I mean, just go to the self-help section or the business section of any bookstore and you're just like, where do I start? And I was lucky enough to sort of design my own master's at University of Victoria because I took a different path. So I did kind of a minor in leadership and learned a lot. It changes all the time too. I mean, Dale Carnegie still has a lot to say, how to make friends and influence people is still a book that I go back to occasionally and go, yeah, that guy was right. Teaching, I mean, that's the other old adage, are leaders born or are they made? I think it's both. But how are they made is your question, right? I mean, yes, they are made through mistakes for sure. But do those mistakes have to be on the job? Could we be creating more opportunities for failure, so to speak, in our music education curriculum? I think we can. Are we letting any of our students, let alone music education students and conductors, are we giving them opportunities to take real risks, whether they be musical risks or leadership risks or decisions? No, I think that we forget that we're a school, right? And school is a place to learn and make mistakes and take risks. But we've created a whole generation or more of students who want to get the A and be perfect. And that's not how you create great leadership or great teaching or great conducting, in my opinion. I think what I said earlier about allowing students or facilitating students in the curriculum, I mean systemically, not just in your own conducting class or music education class, but allowing students to make connections across curriculum will spark creativity. I actually I can't remember the percentage of their grade, my graduate conducting students to take a risk and learn from it every day on the podium. I actually think that music leadership band camp does a lot. I mean, some of the stuff that Tim Leitzenhauser does and Matthew Arau and Scott Rush is the other guy. Yeah, some of it's kind of, rah and can't we all get along stuff. That's true. But the heart of it is just good leadership. How to instill empathy and compassion, how to serve something larger than yourself, how to become curious, right? I think that's a big part of leadership and great conducting is to have a strong sense of empathy and curiosity about people, and you can practice these things, right? Curiosity about composers, curiosity about theory and history, the audience, being curious about your audience, being curious about everything, like read. So I think that these are things that we aren't necessarily putting in the curriculum that we could.
That's really important. And then, as you say, I will be asking you for the book list.
For sure. Right now, right now I'm just reading a bunch of novels because I'm on vacation And so I've gone to New York Times and the Globe and Mail, like best novels of 2021 and 22. And I'm having a heyday, just like losing myself in really great stories. But there's always something to pick up in a great novel, right? That sense of narrative arc. Right now I'm reading a book called The Huntress by Kate Quinn. And the way she's weaving together a tale from a variety of viewpoints and the way it's coming together is so extremely exciting. The whole time I'm reading this, wouldn't this be a cool composition, a musical composition that this one part is told from one point of view, and then there's another point of view, and then there's another point of view, and then it all comes together in this really suspenseful, creative way. And maybe that's a lot of compositions, and I'm not thinking about them the right way. But yeah, I mean, there's just something to learn from everything, in my view.
That's for sure. And I particularly love how novels connect people, like kind of influence you and make you feel relatable, and you want to find out what's going on next. You're not bored with good novels, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Page turner. Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure a lot of our repertoire is page turning, but if you know what I mean, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. But I would just say that doesn't discredit us not trying newer music or supporting composers.
For sure.
At all. Yeah.
But there's an interesting trend that I've seen with the new music, a lot of the new music, especially for wind ensemble, but I'm also noticing it orchestra and new music in general, like contemporary small chamber music, whatever we call these things now, or whatever label we're going to put on them, that there is a sort of we've moved away from the Milton Babbitt school of who cares if you listen to a school of we care if you listen. And there's really beautifully crafted music that's still super interesting, sometimes fun, often groove based. And it turns out that that's why we love music often, right? Is that it does have a good beat and you can dance to it like this. It does matter for a lot of things, not everything, but the other thing, the reason we love music is repetition. And we frowned on that in the early part of my career anyway. Oh, it's so repetitive. Have you heard Mozart? He's pretty repetitive. It's just that what he's repeating is like super cool. So it's really interesting at a certain, you don't know this yet, but you get to a certain age and you can see, I've certainly seen it in fashion, but it's also happening in music, how certain things have either come for a circle or we're at this part of the pendulum now. And it's really, really interesting to see how trends move and shake and influence others.
For sure. I wanted to kind of circle back to the modules that you were talking about earlier, because I know a notion of building curriculum that way was because they wanted students first to be equipped with enough skills. So say a brand new conductor just conducting for the first month, don't know where to put their hands, don't know where to follow on the score. If you are throwing them into, I'll talk about leadership, you have to empathy. It's like, we just can't listen and I don't know what I'm doing. So that's why we broke them into different parts to make it easier to grab. In a sense, how do you see that in a more integrated way? But of course, we don't want them to be so disconnected between the different skills. I hate the word skills that you have to have, but like different sectors.
Yeah, well, they are skills, though. I mean, but I think, it's sort of the same way a good rehearsal, right, is kind of hourglass model or macro, micro, macro, right? If you can still sort of establish parts of being a conductor or a leader or a great teacher, there's this part, there's this part, there's this part. And as long as you are sort of allowing students the time to synthesize that, right? Whether it be at the end of the week or the end of the end of that particular class, and asking questions, right? Well, how does this relate to what we talked about on Tuesday, right? How does this relate to what we talked about an hour ago or what you did on the podium an hour ago? Can you see the connection? Giving them the space to make the connection between what their hand is doing, where they should be looking at the score, and who they should be looking at, right? And why it matters. Why? That's the big question, right? I think that we can all do better at that. But right now it's just not happening in the curriculum. And I don't even pretend to have all the answers here. Like, don't think that I'm some kind of expert in this, right? But I know we got to try to do it better.
That's what I love about conducting is like we can always be better, all of us. There's always something that we can learn, we can improve ourselves on. And then as I felt with some teachers, they were not taught that way. So it's how they were trained. They didn't even think about kind of discussing with you what you say in rehearsal, how you phrase that request, how you look at the ensembles. They are a lot of little nuances.
I mean, the listeners can't see, but I'm smiling from ear to ear because, I mean, these are the questions a lot of us have been asking for years, right? I mean, one thing that we're doing at Laurier that I'm so thrilled with is that we are starting a course that already is on overload. We have a wait list for it called Public Speaking and Acting. Maureen Forrester, who was a celebrated contralto in the world, but she was Canadian. Our recital hall is named after her. One of her daughters, Linda Cash, she was on Seinfeld. She was, whose girlfriend was she on Seinfeld? George's girlfriend on Seinfeld for I don't know how many episodes, but she was also the Philadelphia cream cheese lady with the wings and stuff in the cloud before your time. Anyway, she's also Canadian, and she's teaching this course called Public Speaking and Acting. And as I said, it's like, quote unquote, oversold. I mean, there's a massive wait list for it to get in, which tells us, right, that this is something that our students want. And when I was at Cornell and one of my sabbaticals, I took acting and movement and speaking lessons. I was going to go to New York City, but the guy wanted to come out of the city, so he actually came and stayed at our house. So I had these private acting, public speaking, and movement lessons. And he was a musician. He played French horn in college at Cincinnati, actually. And he kind of tailored this 4-day workshop with me, completely changed how I thought about conducting. Completely. And so I think that there's a lot for us as conductors to learn and music education students to learn from acting. And we think, well, we don't act on the podium. The whole point is to learn how to be yourself, which is harder than it sounds, right? To be yourself on the podium. But we don't want to act when we're up there. That's exactly what we're trying not to do. But if you think about it a little bit differently, we all know the actors in Hollywood who keep playing themselves in the movie, right? It's like, I think I would meet that guy and he would be exactly who he keeps playing in the movies. And then we know the other actors who can change their whole being for a character, right? They become that character. Meryl Streep becomes Sophie, right? Meryl Streep becomes whoever she has ingested with that script, right? And that's what we want as conductors, right? We don't want to act the music. We want to be the music, right? We want to ingest the script, which in our case is the score. We want to learn how to improvise and be empathetic and great listeners and react on the podium and on the screen, right? With our other actors, in this case, musicians. So there's a ton we can learn from acting classes. Public speaking, same thing. Poetry, all of these things that will inform, like you said, how we say things, how we ask for things, what metaphors we use that will be relatable to people, our tone of voice, the speed in which we speak relative to the thing that we are asking, relative to the gesture we are using, relative to the music we are performing. I mean, again, making all those connections. I mean, I took videos of myself recording myself at Cornell and at Georgia, and I'd watch them and go, I am yelling a lot. I'm not speaking in different timbres relative to the music. I'm not waiting. I'm not using silence enough to get their attention. And you fall back into various habits, right, to get the job done, right, to be more efficient. I can't recommend recording yourself enough. You have to have a strong sense of personal affirmation. But it's like, okay, my voice doesn't sound like this. But you really are your own best teacher.
I know. I don't have the right word for it, but when I heard someone like you having conducted for so many years, still watch your own videos, a lot of time when I saw myself, I was like, oh, that's a really boring conductor.
Yeah. Boring. There's some words I've had for myself that go beyond boring that I shall not share in public. But yeah, I mean, and if you've got the willpower, right? We talk about impulsive will on the podium. What about the impulsive will to watch yourself and improve, right? It's hard. I walk down practice room hallway at Georgia and I hear amazing students sounding great, right? I didn't hear a lot of mistakes because that's not the human condition, right? We practice what we do well and we want to feel good about that. So we keep practicing, right? Aren't I wonderful? Versus training our weaknesses, right? And we all have them. It's just hard. But that's also conducting.
But what you say was really amazing, this acting class. Now I want to take one. I want to create something for myself. So I heard about acting classes for singers, since that's kind of like more naturally what you associate acting with musicians. And I know Alice Farham, when she did the workshop for women, like beginning women conductors in the United Kingdom, she also incorporated that. Like, I think she focused more about like exploring your body, understand how to best use the different parts. But you were talking about deeper, right? Kind of really becoming something that you want to become.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was to design, and I will be designing a conducting workshop, there would be lots of elements of what you're talking about. Tai Chi, mime.
We can do one together.
Let's do it.
I'll do all the work.
Let's do it.
You just come, show up. That's the hardest part. I'll do all the work.
I'm down. Let's do it. Yeah, I mean, mime. We make fun of mime artists all the time, but I mean, they tell stories with their body, and isn't that what we're doing? So, beginning conducting classes, teaching them the pattern from the get-go. No, right? What about playing charades? Let's get them, like you say, understanding their body and using their body to communicate things without their voice. That's what we need to do more of from the get-go and all through our conducting training. Yeah, the acting classes I took were actually more like therapy. At some point I went, hang on a second. Is this a therapy session? Because this guy is getting in there, right? And I wrote an article about it actually because it was so profound, and it was in the WASB magazine. It was called What's with the Russian Soldier? It was back when I was at Cornell, so probably around 2010 or something like that. And he had me do this. I mean, we did a lot that weekend, but one of the most profound exercises was I had to use the whole room. And in Ithaca, we had this sort of walkout basement. So it was a large space, carpeted. I had to use my whole voice and my entire body and the entire space to tell a story. But it couldn't be linear. Like, it couldn't be a narrative. It couldn't be from this point to this point to this point, leading to this point. I tried it, and I went on for about 5 minutes, which seemed like an eternity. And I kept saying, and then, and he'd say, stop, start again. No, I'm a frog, blah, 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 I'm in a tree. And then the princess, stop. It's like, I was just like, then I was, type A. I have to be good at this from the get-go, competitive. I was getting really upset. And, he made me try it like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times. And I finally said, Jason, I just don't know what you're after. Can you show me? And he got up there and did this. I don't even know how to describe it. Performance art. It was gorgeous. It was exciting. It was compelling. It was not linear. It was this sort of abstract, crazy painting, story, music that he did with his body, his voice in the room that I just was, holy smokes. And then I tried it again and failed and failed and failed and failed. Stole some of his stuff, and he'd stop me there. He said, "That's my story." Said, shit. Excuse my French. And then and so I got really frustrated, and it went on for about an hour. And he saw that I was getting very frustrated. I was getting frustrated. I wasn't on the verge of tears, but I was really quite angry about that I couldn't do this, and confused. Like, I didn't still know exactly what he wanted. So he said, "Cindy, come over here. And I walked over and he was sitting on a chair and I stood in front of him and he said, do you trust me? And I lied and I said, yes, because I just wanted this to be over. Yes, Jason, I trust you. And he said, I want you to be the Russian soldier and take one step to your left. And I know it sounds bizarre, but I knew exactly what he meant. So I became the Russian soldier, which I kept referring to in my failed stories. When I couldn't think of anything, when I was really frustrated, I would kind of become this Russian soldier. So I would stand like super erect and I would do the high knee marching. And I had a rifle and I was looking straight ahead. And I was kind of walking around. And I guess I don't remember, but I guess I kept coming back to that person in my failed storytelling. Take one step to the left and become the Russian soldier. I was like, the weirdest thing. And he said, you're very important to Cindy, aren't you? Yes, sir. You protect Cindy, don't you? Yes, sir. Like, boom, 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 boom. And the point of the entire weekend was to figure out your archetypes. So it's very Jungian, Carl Jung in The Power of the Archetype, which I subsequently read. Went, oh my gosh, this is like extremely deep and important. But it was, he got to all of them. It was all about discipline and obeying, athleticism, all things that very, very, I guess, important to me. He got to the clown, which is another, archetype I will revert to in times of stress or to if I see people uncomfortable, like, oh, I'm the one there, and then they're making like a joke and trying to make everybody laugh. Like he found all of these parts of my personality, deep or not deep, parts of my psyche, as it were, that I reverted to in times of stress. So in other words, it really was it was 4 days of knowing thyself, peppered in with all these acting and movement lessons. It was like, holy smoke. And so do I think that that's important for good leadership in conducting, knowing who you are? Absolutely. Not for everyone. And frankly, I didn't know what I was getting into. That at one point in the weekend, I was like, what have I done? This is like not what I didn't want therapy. I wanted to understand my body and how to use my body and voice and movement better as a conductor. But it turns out that that's really tied into knowing who you are as a human.
So how does that translate to knowing yourself and how you, I don't even know how to ask this question. Like I was trying to understand, how does that translate into your work with ensembles as a conductor with musicians? You're coming with a totally different mindset for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to get into ego a little bit. We can talk a little bit about ego. I mean, if you don't have an ego, there's something wrong, but getting that, knowing your ego and when it is getting in the way of the music and the music making and the musicians, that's part of it, right? So knowing yourself to the point where you can say, that's my ego right now. That is my ego. Back off, right? This is not about you, Cindy, right? This is about XYZ or the music or that kid who's now crying in your ensemble or whatever, right? It allows me, and again, I haven't completely figured, this is a lifelong journey, but it allows me to be more empathetic to other people when I see behaviors mirrored that I completely relate to, that I find annoying or distasteful. I'll go, well, that's because I do that. That's why I find it annoying. So show a little compassion or a little understanding, right? I now know how to communicate with this person because that's how I would like to be communicated with. I think, right? It doesn't work all the time, but it certainly helps. And in times of stress, which happen a lot on the podium, right? At least for me, in rehearsals and in performances, is quickly understanding what's going on, right? And understanding what happens to the body. Because in a variety of these exercises that my acting teacher was taking me through, he was helping me understand what was happening in my body while I was feeling certain things. Adrenaline, pulse, heart rate, sweating, all of the things, and how to sort of breathe and get them in check and understand where they were coming from. So that's part of it too.
So public speaking and acting, what else do you want to add to our conducting program? So we would be the program that doesn't teach conducting techniques. Is that even possible?
Well, maybe because no. Well, I mean, I think the other part of it would be mime and Tai Chi as well. I took a Tai Chi class and I was so, oh my God, you people, can we not move faster? I mean, this is so boring. But I think there's some, like I kept trying, of course, and started to understand some of these motions and understand why they were important. And also you take a deeper dive into Tai Chi. And again, I know just enough to be dangerous here, to quote my dear friend Brett Bauckham. The movement of energy around the body and around your person, that you are capable of actually manipulating that energy. I mean, we're getting like pretty esoteric here, but that is a thing. And to understand that as a composer, sure, but as a conductor, I think is extremely interesting, right? And some students would relate to that and some students wouldn't. I certainly didn't at the beginning. It was like, this is boring. Can we go, like, let's go swimming or biking or something? Like, I don't want to, it's like, I don't want to memorize these patterns, but super cool, right? And even if you don't like take up Tai Chi for the rest of your life, are there motions that you learn in Tai Chi that could transfer, that are quite stunning relative to the music that you're doing, that could transfer into your body, that your body learns and therefore translate into conducting? Same thing with mime. Same thing with acting. Improvisation would be a huge part of a conducting workshop. Not just improvisation, not improvisation with music, although you could transfer it into, but improvisation with each other, right? Really, really deep listening and responding in the moment. You can prepare for an improv, but you also have to respond and react in the moment. And that is exactly what rehearsing is, right? You can prepare for a rehearsal. How many times have we seen this? How many times have we done this? Where we prepare a rehearsal and you don't actually change that based on what's happening in front of you. You know what I mean? Like you just keep barreling through with the rehearsal that you've prepared. Well, in fact, some things that might have fixed themselves from the last rehearsal to the next rehearsal. So why are you actually spending all that time doing that? Bozo, because I rehearsed it. I rehearsed my rehearsal. No, that's okay to prepare a rehearsal, but you also have to react immediately to what you're hearing, what's coming at you in time, in the moment, right? And that's good improvisation. So learning those skills as an actor can translate on the podium as well. Because good improvisation is good listening and good reacting, right?
Catching the sound and react to it.
There you go.
I asked that question because I was thinking it would be nice for the conductors to have a chance to use all the things with the ensemble. But with a lot of teachers that I've worked with, it's so hard for teachers to see something going wrong and not to correct it. And then we fall into like, hey, you should do your hands this way. That's a challenge that I've been experiencing. But I took notes. I'm serious about this because I've been giving a lot of thoughts what girls who conduct can become, because there are so many different workshops. And then from one of our programs, the participant told us like they wish they were more actual conducting. And I told them that's what you would get from other conducting workshops. There are workshops specifying like in that you get a lot of podium time, you get to try things out, make mistakes. We're having really good teachers, but that is not what we're trying to give you. We're trying to give you a lot of other things that we learned much later. It are so important to the career. While I understand that mostly they are still worrying about their hand, but it's a different mindset.
Yeah, it would be interesting to design a conducting workshop. Maybe it would be over a week where you could do a lot of these things that relate to conducting: Tai Chi, yoga, acting, public speaking, improv, charades, at various levels, conducting poetry, whatever it is. And then also have some podium time, maybe with even a chamber ensemble, which is a little bit more intimate, and some particularly younger conductors feel a little bit more at ease to take more risks. And then again, in terms of good curriculum, allowing the students to make a connection from the Tai Chi class to what they're doing on the podium, or from that hey, but that's not how you behaved in the improv class. What can you do here in this rehearsal that's a little bit more spontaneous, say, or, that kind of thing, that you can allow the conducting workshop participants to make the connection between what they're learning over here with their body, with their psyche, with their voice, with their hands, whatever it is, and applying it to a music situation. And perhaps that small chamber ensemble is part of the workshop as well. Like they're taking these other quote unquote extra musical classes just for fun, so they're also understanding. Because as soon as that's part of great leadership too, right? Is a shared vision. If you don't have a shared vision, it's probably not going to work, right? So bringing the musicians into the process. We ask all the time, what makes a good conductor? Ask musicians, right? Ask people that you're in front of. They'll tell you. And so why not bring them more part of the process when we're teaching good conducting?
What's in my mind now is it would be so hard to book you for a week.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true.
It might have to be like in 5 years.
No, I don't know. Well, for sure in 5 years. In 4 years, I have a year of leadership leave. I was going to say administrative leave, but I've taken administration out of my lexicon and replaced it with leadership. So every time somebody says administration, I go leadership or administrative. No, that's just leadership, right? The policy person's over there, right? And they're fantastic at it, and I'm not. So vision and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I actually get a year off in 4 years. So we could do it then, or summertime. I take holidays and we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would start experimenting maybe even with 1 day and then add it to 2 days. And then by the 4th year, I'll be ready for you.
Yeah. I mean, one of the, and I had been trying to do this at Georgia for 5 years or something. And I finally got George, I can't think of his last name, George. He was, again, acting and movement prof at UGA, just fantastic. And I had him come and teach my graduate conducting class. I just said, George, it's all yours. And I told him about my experience with the guy from New York City. I said, I want them to get in tune with their body and want you to do a bunch of exercises. And I'm telling you, we had 2 hours of the most fun, laughing, crying in a good way, like complete aha moments. So it's, I can't recommend.
Is it George Kennedy?
Yeah. Look at you doing your research in the moment. That's awesome.
That's awesome. We'll make something happen in Georgia, I promise.
Yeah, he'd be great. He's amazing.
Yeah. So just to wrap up our conversation, what are some of the things that you learned along this amazingly adventurous journey?
Long journey.
Conducting people and music.
Yeah. Well, I've learned that you're always learning. I'm always learning. I've learned that I haven't figured it out. I've learned to trust myself and other people more. That was hard for me as a young person. It was hard for me to trust people. I've learned, and I'm still learning not to compare myself to others. That is the secret of unhappiness. But I'm still learning.
It's so hard.
I'm getting better. Facebook is hard for that, right? I read Facebook and I just get so jealous. Not jealous, but oh man, I wish I was doing that. I wish I was on that beach, or I wish that person has such an amazing life, or blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's their social media life, right? So I've learned about that. I've learned to take risks and be okay with that. I mean, I took a lot of risks musically and in presenting concerts at Georgia. Lots of risks with lots of help. I did not do this on my own. I had grad students who were like, yeah, let's try this. And not everything was a success, but many things were. And I hear about it later, that this was so inspiring, or I did this too, or thank you for doing this, because that's, it's changing the paradigm of these bizarre concert rituals that we still put people through in quote unquote classical music concerts, which are so awful, in my opinion. They're so restricting. And so I've been buoyed by that, by taking risks. And what we do is not heart surgery, so nobody's going to die if we try something new, right? And it doesn't work out. It's just going to be, we tried something new and it didn't work out. Onward. So I've learned to be more courageous with that kind of stuff. My 360 review, my first year as a dean, so they asked, people that report to me, and there are a lot of people now that report to me, it turns out, and colleagues, other deans, and people that I report to, which is the president and the provost. And it was overall very positive, but the one piece of advice was slow down.
I can see that. Don't chase the thunderstorms.
Yeah, I thought, no, the rest of y'all, try to keep up. I have a 5-year term. Let's go. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about this for years, right? In terms of changing the curriculum. What is the problem? Let's go. But I get it, like shared vision and all that sort of stuff. I get it. So, but I've learned that too, that I need to slow down sometimes. I've learned that most people, not all, that most people are just trying their best, and no amount of me berating them or yelling at them is going to make them do better. I don't know. That's pretty good, right?
Yes. That's a pretty good life.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
I'm totally lucky. I get it. Very lucky. And it's not over. Gosh, you sound like I'm about to get a Lifetime Achievement Award, and then people like die 10 years later. No, I'm still going strong. But it's things like this where I am continually amazed that people are interested in what I might have to say. But also when I start talking, it's like, yeah, it's been a long career, and I'm still learning.
That's the beauty of it.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat with you. Finally. You're awesome. Everybody.
No, you're awesome.
She's awesome.
Everybody's awesome.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing. I love the organization. I wish I could be more involved than I am, but anything you need, please just let me know and we'll make it happen.
Being a role model and telling me all about this acting class. I'm so excited.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Hey, I didn't lie to you, right? This was such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we finally found a time to connect with each other and to talk about really important stuff. It's such a vague concept of good conducting, but it's something like laugh and love that you can't hide from others. Everybody knows when the conducting sucks. We can't really describe what good conducting is because everybody has different priorities, have different criteria of how you judge conducting. Some people like people that are technically sharper. Some people like a lot of musical ideas. Some people like really connections. If your technique sucks, that's okay because your eye tells all the stories. There are those kind of conductors, right? But when the conducting sucks, we all know it. That's something you can't hide. And I'm so happy that she shared her experiences. And I love that she, at her status, at this time of history, I'm exaggerating, but she still watches her own conducting videos and learn from it. That's something we could all learn from her, right? I have to say, I am guilty. I stopped recording myself for quite a while, and I stopped looking at myself to embarrass myself because I hate it. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but that's something important. And to be a good leader and be really understanding who you are, how you respond to things, how do you react to different situations, all that comes to the package. I loved this conversation so much, and I hope you are the same. Thank you again for sharing your time here with me, and I hope to see you next week at the same time, same place. Bye for now, and take care.